Late in World War II, the United States started development on an aircraft that would become an icon. It was bright orange, its fuselage was modeled after a 50 caliber bullet, and it would turn one of its test pilots into a legend. You know I'm talking about the Bell X-1. We all know the Bell X-1. But what about the X-2? No, not that one. How about the X-3 or the X-4? My point is, if you're anything like me, you've heard the greatest hits. The Bell X-1, the X-15, the one with the forward-swept wings, maybe a few others. But have you ever wanted to know all of them? If not, why did you click on a video with this title and thumbnail? Why are you here? I mean, thank you? The Bell X-1. Maybe the most famous X-plane. First mancraft to break the sound barrier in level flight, Chuck Yeager, you know all that. But what you might not have known is the Bell X-1 had a few different variants. The A is the famous one. The B variant tested out RCS, basically. It was the first aircraft to use thrusters for directional control. The C was cancelled before it was finished, but it would have been used to test weapons at supersonic speeds. It would have had weird vertical bits coming off the tops and bottoms of the wings. It looked strange. The D variant would have been used to test heat transfer, but it exploded before its first powered flight. The E would be the final version, and it featured many improvements. From a new wing profile that allowed it to pass Mach 2 to a new canopy. It went from a P-51 style to an F-102 type setup. It also now featured a turbopump, so that the fuel could be stored at lower pressures. It made 26 flights and was permanently grounded because of cracks developing in the airframe. The Bell X-2 Starbuster. It looks like an X-1 with swept wings, and that's not too far off. Both were made by Bell, dropped by a carrier aircraft. It was a B-50, which is basically a souped-up B-29. The key difference is the X-1 was developed to research flight above Mach 1, and the X-2 was designed for speeds of up to Mach 3. Milburn G. Abt would be the test pilot to push it to Mach 3.2, but shortly after reaching that speed, he tried to make a turn and entered an unrecoverable inverted spin. He ejected, but the seat only had a drogue chute, and the force of the ejection left him injured and unable to use his personal parachute, and he died upon impact with the ground. I should mention that these early prototypes were all incredibly dangerous. Mel wasn't the only person killed by the X-2, and the X-1 wasn't free of casualties either. These things were death traps as much as research aircraft, but test pilots would still line up for a chance at a record-breaking flight. I'm not good at making videos yet, so I'm going to struggle with how to balance these tragic events with the lighter tone I'm going for. X-3 Stiletto. This one has nothing in common with the first two. It was made by Douglas, not Bell. It wasn't a rocket, it was powered by a pair of turbojets, and it took off from the ground rather than being dropped from a mothership. It was made to test low aspect ratio trapezoidal wings at speeds around Mach 2, but it had disappointing performance, needing to enter a dive to push past even Mach 1. Because of the underwhelming flight performance of the plane due to its underpowered engines, the program was cut short. 2 were ordered and only 1 was produced. The data collected from this thing went on to influence the F-104 Starfighter's design. It did manage not to kill any of its pilots over the 4 years and 51 flights it made before it was retired. That's a borderline miracle considering its poor handling and ridiculously high landing speed. The X-4 Bantam. I might have dyslexia because I definitely read this name as Batman the first time. It had a similar layout to the Me-163, the World War II rocket interceptor. It was manufactured by Northrop, and if you know anything about Northrop, it's not surprising to learn that it had no horizontal stabilizer. It wasn't quite a true flying wing, but I'll give them half credit. It was hypothesized that shockwaves forming on the wings affecting the airflow over the elevator was the cause of instability in the transonic envelope. So what if they just got rid of them? Turns out that doesn't work super well. It wasn't that stable in the pitch axis, or roll or yaw for that matter. It experienced pitch oscillations or porpoising at higher speeds. They tried modifying the trailing edge of the wings with strips of balsa wood, which managed to delay the pitch oscillations from Mach 0.74 to around Mach 0.92. It was decided after this project that tailless planes probably wouldn't be the best choice for anything getting close to the sound barrier, at least for the time being. The X-5. We're back to Bell for this one. The X-5 was meant to test variable sweep wings. It was the first aircraft to be able to change the sweep of its wings in flight, which is pretty cool. It had 3 preset angles for the wings to be swept at: 20 degrees, 40 degrees, and 60 degrees. It would translate the wings forward as they were rotated backwards to try and preserve the center of pressure. Very cool stuff. Unfortunately, it had a tendency to enter unrecoverable spins with the wings in the 60-degree position, which led to the death of Air Force Captain Ray Popson. The aircraft was subsonic and topped out around Mach 0.9. This aircraft paved the way for planes like the F-111 Aardvark, the F-14 Tomcat, and the Panavia Tornado. The X-6 is kind of batshit insane. All the other X-planes at this point have been single-seat aerodynamic testbeds. That isn't the case with the X-6. It was an early step in making a nuclear-powered bomber. Not a nuclear-capable bomber. A bomber that's thrust came from nuclear jet engines powered by a nuclear reactor. This is some Fallout shit right here. The project was cancelled before it was anywhere close to completion, but the idea was to have a bomber that could stay airborne for weeks at a time. So what exactly was the X-6? Well, they put a 1 megawatt air-cooled nuclear reactor in the bomb bay of a B-36. It didn't power the aircraft, they were just testing radiation on flight systems. They also added 12 tons of radiation shielding for the crew. A nuclear jet engine was developed, the General Electric X-39, though it never flew. If this nuclear-powered aircraft would have made it into production, it basically would have been a nuclear variant of the B-60, but as it turns out, a nuclear reactor and adequate shielding for a crew is quite heavy. That's not a problem in a power plant or an aircraft carrier or a submarine, but on a plane? That matters a lot. Plus, aerial refueling was a technology that was coming into its own around that time. Aerial refueling also gave bombers an extended range and loiter time without risking a reactor meltdown flying across the continental United States. Thing would be Chernobyl on wings. The Lockheed X-7. This was a prototype for ramjets and missile guidance. It's the first unmanned aircraft on this list, and it really stretches the definition of plane. It needed to be launched from a carrier aircraft like the X-1 and X-2. It could hit speeds of Mach 4.3, and it landed like a lawn dart with the help of a parachute. It would later be developed into a target drone. The X-8 Aero B. If the last one stretched the definition of a plane, this one shatters it. If you've played RP-1 in Kerbal Space Program, this should be familiar to you. It was an early sounding rocket designed to research the upper atmosphere. It had 2 stages. Stage 1 was a powerful and brief kick from a solid rocket motor lasting only 2.5 seconds. And Stage 2 was a liquid-fueled engine that would burn for about 40 seconds. It was pretty small, weighing only 135 pounds with no fuel. That's about as much as me, pretty much. And sort of replaced the V-2 for American scientific research. Bell X-9. It was a surface-to-air missile prototype powered by a liquid-fueled engine. It existed as a testbed for the GAM-63 Rascal air-to-surface nuclear missile and the Air Force's first standoff missile. There's not much to say about this one. X-10. It was a test for cruise missiles. It had 2 afterburning turbojet engines, a range of about 1,000 kilometers, and a top speed of Mach 2.05, and some impressive guidance systems that let it land autonomously. It also looked fucking sick. The X-11 is gonna have to wait till next time. That's right! It's a cliffhanger! I'm starting a series, not like the KSP2 weekly challenges that died after 3 weeks. This one's for real. 9 more seasons, Morty. 9 more seasons. I turned myself into a domestic abuse allegation recipient, Morty. Funniest shit I ever I can't say funniest shit I ever saw to domestic abuse allegations.